And then what you'll have is only the stuff that everyone expects a Christian to have. For each will have to bear his own load, it says in verse 5. Now, I spent a lot of time on that sentence because that doesn't seem to fit. I don't really get it. Didn't he say in verse 2 to bear each other's burdens? And then he says in verse 5 that we have to bear our own load. Well, I didn't realize they were two different words. The bear in verse 2 and the bear in verse 5. So maybe it sounds a little bit negative, but that word bear there in verse 5 is the load of a soldier. In other words, this is the load that you would expect to have if you were asked to serve the Lord. It's not some additional burden that you've brought with you. It's the expectation that God has of this is what it is for you to serve me. And the load, what is the load? What's the expectation? That you'll empty yourself. Well, that doesn't seem very heavy at all. So if you embrace the grace that lifts you up, well, guess what? You've emptied yourself. Now you can bear a whole lot of other loads, and you can lift everyone else up around you, and then you'll be participating in those great relationships that you were meant for. Great relationships bear all loads. As we saw earlier, the Christian understanding of love is honoring each other, putting others ahead of yourself, serving each other. But the world sees love like this. This person that I met, this person is going to be the one where I'm going to attach myself to them, and through their love of me, I'm going to ultimately make myself feel like I'm somebody. It is often what we see in terms of dysfunctional motherhood, why mothers have multiple children. Because I'm going to find my worth through my motherhood. They'll make me feel like I'm somebody. If I can do it well, then I'll even prove that I'm somebody. And so they pursue someone specifically to deal with the emptiness inside, that glory vacuum that we all have. And in that pursuit, my love, my desire is really all about me. But heavenly love, instead of using the other person to fill yourself, heavenly love empties for the other person and says, how can I show you how valuable you really are? Jesus doesn't glorify himself, he empties himself. He doesn't use other people's misfortunes to make himself appear bigger and larger. He takes on their misfortune to show them their true value. So in the same way, Paul says in verse 2, bear one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. In this case, it's come alongside, pick it up. See, in Philippians chapter 2, Jesus said, even though I'm something, I'm going to make myself nothing. And here Paul says, if you think you're something, when you're nothing, you've deceived yourself. And if you're under this self-delusion, you're not going to have any of the right attitudes you need to bear anybody else's burdens, because it's all going to be about you. You're going to be focusing on yourself, and that's just logic. And so you must see that in Christianity, you're nothing, but you're nothing with grace, which is this weird position that only Christians can be in. And look at what Paul could do with grace. And that brings you to the point where you also, when you perceive yourself that way, can actually then perceive others. You can see them for the very first time. You can see what they're carrying around, and there ends up being compassion for them. Not cynicism, not conceit, actual compassion. How does that look? Verse 1, brothers, if anyone is caught in any transgression, you who are spiritual should restore him in a spirit of gentleness. Keep watch on yourself, lest you too be tempted. And so this is the opposite of what we saw the Pharisees do. Remember when they dragged that woman caught in adultery before Jesus? They throw her down in front of him, and they expect him to lead them into stoning this woman to death. And they want to condemn her. Why? Because they saw themselves as being better than her. I would never do what she did. But you remember what Jesus says? Let him who's without sin cast the first stone. And they all drop their rocks and they all walk away. And Jesus says to the woman, where are your accusers? Neither do I accuse you. That imagery fits the verbiage here. Watch yourself because you know exactly what you're capable of. You know that sin can overtake you as well. And if you haven't figured that out by now, I don't know how I can help you with that. That's something you got to discover for yourself. But you know it because you, by the way, are the foremost of all sinners. Just like Paul was. Well, we can't all be the foremost. Yeah, well, that's a tie. And since we know that sin is crouching at our door, we know how good it feels then to be restored. And so he says, restore others. You know how good it feels when you're restored. Restore others. That word for restore is the same as the Greeks used for setting bones. Make them straight again. But do it gently. Why? Because we are so prone to legalism. If we approach that restoration through this superiority process, I can't believe you would do this. How dare you? What kind of person are you? That's just legalism. If we don't do it gently, we're just going to be bludgeoning each other with the law. We'll be right back to devouring again. Remember, your example is Christ. Psalm 23 says, the Lord is my shepherd. Like immediately we get that imagery of gentleness. In verse 3 he says, he restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. There's that restoration again. He restores my soul. And then he leads me in paths of righteousness. That's our model. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. And there's that picture of that vertical relationship. Like David moves from, third person he does that. Verses 1 through 3 to verse 4, you, personal relationship, are with me. You are not alone. You're not alone. And that relationship is available only because Jesus emptied himself. And because he emptied himself, you can now live solidly in relationship with him. But you can also live boldly and humbly in relationship with everyone horizontally around you, without envying or provoking. Why? Because there is no conceit in you anymore. You're not looking for your own glory. You can establish and develop relationships then without fear when you're following Christ's example. And your relationships then can be used to relieve crushing burdens that you would never, nobody would ever be able to bear alone. Because it's not good to be alone. And when we're alone, we have all these burdens that we can't possibly bear. And so that's why I say we need to come here and fellowship together as a community so that we can know each other, so that we can help each other, so that we can restore each other. This is the purpose of church. It's not to come and sing a few songs and hear a marginal sermon. It's so that you can work on each other and you can bear your soul to each other without fear. Oh, church, are we a church like that? Where we can bear our soul to each other without fear? May we be a church that understands the grace that we've been given. Even though we ourselves are foremost among sinners, we have grace. May we be a church that bears each other's burdens and restores brothers and sisters gently. May we display the love of God. And may we bring that love to everybody that we come into contact with.